The Khmer Issarak was a loosely structured anti-French and anti-colonial independent movement. Besides, the movement was labeled as amorphous. The Issarak was formed around 1945 and composed of several factions, each with its own leader. Most of the Issarak bands fought actively between 1945, at the end of the Second World War, to 1953, Cambodia's independence. Initial objectives of the Khmer Issarak was to fight against the French in order to gain independence. Later, overthrowing the Cambodian government became some Issarak band's agenda. Moreover, the term Issarak originally referred to non-communist, but in the early 1950s the Viet Minh-guided guerrillas called themselves Issaraks for the sake of unifying other non-communist forces. The Issarak, P.O.C. Kun, a high-born Khmer, founded a movement in Bangkok in 1944 and called it Khmer Issarak. It is the first time that the term Khmer Issarak was used. Some of the early founded Issaraks were backed by the Thai authoritative government. For the end of the Second World War to 1948, the Thai government had a policy to support a large number of guerrilla forces, which operated along the Thai frontier and in the two Thai-ruled provinces, Battambang and Siem Reap. Among those groups which were aided by Thailand, some of the members later established right-wing and left-wing bands, including Sun Nok Min, Siu Heng and Tu Samith. These guerrillas formed a government in exile in Bangkok in 1945. After 1948, several of the Thai-sponsored Issaraks dissolved or cooperated with the Phnom Penh government, which led by Prince Sihanouk. Soon afterwards, the Vietnamese-guided Issaraks formed the Khmer Issarak Association, continuing armed struggles against the Khmer authorities. In the 1950s, the Viet Minh-controlled Issarak groups eventually transformed into communist organizations. For instance, the Khmer People's Revolution Party. Several significant figures in the Democratic Kampuchea who participated in the Cambodian Civil War were closely related to the Viet Minh-influenced Issaraks. During the first decade of armed struggles, there was some coordination between factions. However, in most cases, different bands fought independently. Even in 1953, a year when Cambodia gained independence, the anti-French war was still led by disparate leaders, divided geographically and ideologically. After the Geneva Conference in 1954, due to the agreement, most of the Viet Minh-guided Issaraks exiled to the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, turned underground and formed communist organizations. At the same time, as Cambodia had already gained independence from the French, most of the nationalist Issaraks and some of the communist groups disarmed themselves. Several powerful Issarak leaders such as Dap Tuan and Prince Norodom Shantara Ingse allied with the Sihanouk government in different periods of time. The Khmer Issarak movement faded eventually. Non-communist Issarak groups. During the independence movement, non-communist Issaraks that were based in the northwest dominated the anti-French war, which lasted for around 10 years. Those Issarak groups fought throughout the entire state. The non-communist guerrillas often coordinated battles with the Viet Minh-led Issarak forces. Among the non-communist bands, P.O.C. Kun, Dap Tuan, Prince Shantara Ingses were the most prominent. Furthermore, short-term goal of the Thai-supported Issarak movement was to conduct propaganda against French colonialism in the ceded provinces, which under Thai control from 1941 to 1946. Nevertheless, the ultimate purpose of the movement was to gain full independence for the French Indochina colony. However, in the rightist military coup in Thailand in November 1947, the Pridi administration was overthrown, and the new Thai government reduced supporters and forced the Issaraks to come back to Cambodia. There were two consequences of the return of Thai Prime Minister Phibun. First of all, with Thailand cutting its assistance. The Viet Minh became one of the few sources that the Issarak groups could rely on. Secondly, a permanent split in the Cambodian independent movement between communists and non-communists took place, due to a large number of guerrilla groups being unwilling to work with the Viet Minh. Some of them set up strong bases and became warlords, but the majority dissolved. POC. The first time that the term Khmer Issarak was employed was in 1944, after the new Thai Prime Minister Quang Aphai Wong, who took office under the guide of the King Prithee and his Free Thai movement. Soon a movement called Khmer Issarak was founded by POC, who used to work in the publicity department in Bangkok. POC was born in a high-ranking aristocratic family in Phnom Penh and coincidentally was the uncle of Prince Minirath's wife. In August 1946, POC was the leader of the Khmer Issarak in Battambang province, and was elected as a representative to the House of Representatives from a district in Battambang. He continued to hold office until 1947, even after the province was returned to Cambodia. Dap Chuan. Before the right-wing coup in Bangkok in late 1947, a jointly Khmer Issarak Viet Minh commanded guerrilla group was founded in the Thai capital in February. Dap Chuan became the commander of the group. Chuan was a former Cambodian militia member and an active Issarak. With Thai support, he had organized anti-French guerrilla forces in the ceded provinces since 1943. Chuan believed in supernatural power and often conducted magical ceremonies before his battles. By early 1948, Chuan was the leader of Viet Minh-associated Khmer People's Liberation Committee. Although Dap Chuan's army was initially jointly run with the Viet Minh, and he was the president of KPLC, Chuan himself was not a communist, neither his soldiers received Viet Minh training. In 1949, Dap Chuan rallied with Sihanouk, the negotiation taking a year to reach agreement. In exchange for the submission, Chuan received administrative and military carte blanche over Siem Reap, which became his fief very soon. After rallying with the king, Chuan had been appointed as Director of Security, for the sake of overseeing the 1955 election, and Minister of Interior in 1957. 10 years after his submission, Chuan, who was the governor of Siem Reap and military commander of the Northwest, was accused of attempting to overturn Sihanouk's government, and later he was shot by a killer sent by Lon Nol near Siem Reap in February 1959. Communist Issarak groups, unlike Dap Chuan and his army, who were not communist, Siu Hang, Long Bun Ro, Sun Nok Min and Tu Samith, were significant communist fighters in Cambodia, and the guerrillas were heavily influenced by the Viet Minh. In provinces close to Vietnam, Vietnamese ideologies, organizations and units played critical roles in developing the anti-French resistance. Political schools were set up by the Indochina Communist Party in those bordering provinces. Most of the students were Cambodian who were recruited by the Vietnamese, and they were taught about Marxism-Leninism and significance of cooperating with the Vietnamese. However, as Khmer communist organizations had to subordinate to the victory of the First Indochina War, only at most 5,700 soldiers fought the French with the Vietnamese in Cambodia. Siu Hang was commander of communist Khmer Issaraks, who became a communist in 1945. He led the military resistance against the French in the 1950s but dropped out of politics afterward. After Sun Nok Min left for Hanoi in the mid-1950s, Hen was in charge of communist movements inside Cambodia. Around 1955 election, Hen became a secret agent to Sihanouk and later openly defected to the government, with providing information about revolutionaries to Lon Nol. At the same time, he claimed that making revolution was impossible. In 1975, Hen was killed by his wife's nephew, Long Bunro. Long Bunro joined the Thai Communist Party in 1946, when he was a student at Thammasat University in Bangkok. After the independence in 1953, Long Bunro remained revolutionary and continuously fought against the Sihanouk government as an Issarak leader. At the end of the Civil War, he became the second vital figure of the Communist Party of Cambodia, and better known as Nguyen Chi. Sun Ngoc Min, a Khmer monk, took his name later as Sun Ngoc Min, in order to link with the former Cambodian Prime Minister Sun Ngoc Than and the Viet Minh leader Ho Chi Minh. Sun joined the ICP in 1945. He was the first Cambodian who joined the Vietnamese-dominated organization. After commanding the Cambodian Communists to fight the French in the First Indochina War, Sun moved to northern Vietnam in 1955 and died in 1972. In 1950, as a representative of the Cambodia Communist, Sun Ngoc Min met Viet Minh's representatives with Siu Hang, Tu Sammath and others at Haitian, southern Vietnam, which near Cambodian border. He analyzed the revolutionary situation in Cambodia and stated due to the weak principal force, Cambodia could hardly have a revolution. Later, the First National Congress of Khmer Resistance was held in Cambodia. On the meeting, Khmer Issarak Association and People's Liberation Central Committee was founded. Min was the president of the PLCC, which consisted of all former ICP members. 2 months later, as the Viet Minh-guided Issarak controlled 1/3 of the Cambodian territory, Min declared Cambodia's independence. 3 years before Sihanouk's government gained independence from France. Tu Sammath, a Khmer was an outstanding Buddhist scholar and active communist, who took a revolutionary name of Tu Sammath in 1948. At the time of his assassination, he was the secretary of the CPK's Central Committee, Interior Minister of the Committee of Liberation of the Southeast. Years before his assassination in 1962, Tu Sammath was a patron of a young French-educated Khmer, who worked as Tu Sammath's secretary. The young man was Saloth Sa, better known as Pol Pot after the establishment of Democratic Kampuchea. Legacy of the Issarak movement. The KPLC. On 1 February 1948, the Issarak movement formed the Khmer People's Liberation Committee with Chuon as its president. 5 of its 11 leaders were sympathetic to the Vietnamese, which eliminated certain elements of the Issarak movement. Though Chuon was nominally anti-communist, the organization also had 2 important Viet Minh supporters, Siu Hang, who was the head of the ICP Northwestern branch, and his nephew Long Bunro. By this time the Viet Minh was leading a concerted attempt to foster Issarak's anti-colonialism and to turn it into support for communism in general, and Vietnamese communism in particular. This was especially the case on the eastern side of the country, where guerrilla cells were often commanded by Vietnamese. On the other side of the country, Sun Ngoc Min returned from Thailand with enough weapons to equip a fairly large company. In 1947 he established the Liberation Committee of Southwest Kampuchea. By late 1948 many areas of the country were under the effective control of powerful Issarak organizations. By 1949, however, the Issarak movement in this form was coming to an end. The French began to exploit the greed of some Issarak leaders by giving them colonial positions, while others went off to join more radical organizations. Chon's KPLC expelled Siu Heng and the majority of the other leftists, and remodeled itself as a Khmer National Liberation Committee, with Prince Shantara Ingse as its military commander. Tu Sammath and the other leftist Issaraks formed the United Issarak Front, which had heavy Vietnamese involvement. Chuan went over to the French, while Shantara Ingse eventually left the KNLC and aligned with the right-wing, anti-monarchical Khmer nationalists, the Khmer Issarak, under Sun Ngoc Than. The Khmer Issarak were notorious for the violence during this period, known for torture, banditry, and summary executions. Foundation of the Democratic Kampuchea. Not only would the guerrilla tactics and organization of the Issarak forces be mimicked by the communist forces during the Cambodian Civil War, but many later communists were first introduced to the concepts of Marxist-Leninism whilst involved with the Issaraks. In the eastern area of Cambodia, the leaders of those Viet Minh-influenced forces remained largely unchanged up to and beyond the establishment of Democratic Kampuchea, until purged by Pol Pot in 1976. Their forces not only wore differing uniforms to those of Pol Pot loyalists, but were noted to be exemplary in the treatment of the civilian population and to retain a certain degree of loyalty to Sihanouk.